Well, here we are, and it's Friday, April 15th, 2022. And this is the weekly video. We're going to take a look and see what the prices were on some things that sold over on the newsletter page last week, things that are coming up on the newsletter page, a few things that are happening over on the global page, global user page section. And there's a lot going on. One of the things I wanted to mention was one of that we added to the reference section this week is a very interesting book that is extremely hard to get. And it's on the top left of the page here, if you come over to it. And what it is it's the catalog of Japanese pottery, the original by Edward S. Morse. It was published by the Museum of Fine Arts in 1900. This was a massive book physically. It was a very, very big book. And it was 680 pages long. And it was really the first book that did an in-depth look at Japanese pottery and porcelain by Edward Morse, who was a fellow from the Boston area. He went to Japan. He was a huge collector. He was involved with the government. He was involved with Ernst Fenollosa, who was the ambassador to Japan. He was from Salem, Massachusetts. He was tied up with Dr. Bigelow, William Sturgis Bigelow, another famous collector from Boston, who gave a lot of stuff to the MFA. A lot of this collection is now in the MFA, and some of it's at the Fogg Art Museum at Harvard University. There's a very big, in-depth introduction at the beginning explaining all the different aspects of Japanese pottery making, the tea ceremony, incense burners. It goes through all of it. It's a really interesting book. And in the catalog, there's a section for some Korean pottery. There's some Korean ceramics in here, silverwares, Goryeo wares, and some Joseon period things. And then you get into the Japanese works, and you end up with section by section describing all of the different provinces and areas in Japan where they produce pottery. And then included with it, you'll find marks. And the marks in here are excellent, and they haven't been, widely refuted. So much of the stuff that was written back then in English was inaccurate. Mr. Morse did a phenomenal job gathering marks, researching them, looking them up, identifying them, and then assigning them to the proper potters. And there's a lot of information in here. If you're interested in marks, this is it. The other thing that's nice about it is that this book was reproduced by the publisher there up in Rutland, Vermont. And the problem was that the photographs of the original plates that were in this book were not that well done in the reprints. And in here you get all the original photographs. They're very crisp black and whites, lots of information in them, and there are multiple photos everywhere throughout this book. And what's interesting is that on the right side they have the photographs of the objects. We'll get to one. Here's some. And on the left, they have line drawings with numbers. So if you see something on the shelf that looks interesting, you come over and find the number, then you can go look it up, its corresponding listing in the book. And as I said, this was a 680-page book, all in English, all wonderfully written, and you can now read it on your phone. It's a hard book to get. I actually had a copy of it originally, one of the original copies years ago, and I sold it to a customer who'd been begging for it, and I'd read it, and he was a customer, so I said, yeah, okay, we'll sell it to you. They only published 500 or so of these books originally. The reprints, they've done thousands of them, but this is the original, and it's worth reading. It's worth looking at if you're interested in Japanese ceramics. Really, really interesting. And the other thing I wanted to go through quickly was some of the items that are coming up in this online sale that Sothebys is doing in Paris. This is sort of an online event that they're going to do, and in it are some really interesting objects. I talked about a little bit before, I think, about them. I'm going to talk about a few more pieces in here. One of them is this. It's a circular fan painting here, beautiful landscape scene by Lu Jian, and it is done in the style of Xinjiao. And there's several in here like this. There's a big scroll also in the style of Xinjiao. All right, and it's estimated reasonably. This is the thing that's nice about it. $400 opening bid, €400 opening bid, 600 to 800 euros, which is very reasonable for a fine fan painting, fine circular painting. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned this in one of the a week or two ago in the on the global page video that we did on this, is this table. And I may have mentioned it in another video, but I want to mention it again. I absolutely love this table. Chinese, late 18th century. They've dated it 18th or 19th century because they're not, they're playing a little bit safe. But this is a great looking table. And the archaistic design on the standard on this ball at the bottom is really quite exceptional. This is a beautiful looking table, beautifully worked all the way up. A nice looking original base on it. It hasn't been disturbed. The surface is original from what I can see. It hasn't been, overly refinished or messed with. It's aged very, very nicely. It's given off this great color. And the estimate is reasonable. 1,500 to 2,000 euros, 600 euros starting bid. There are no bids on this table yet, which is a bit of a surprise to me. I think this is a fantastic looking piece of furniture. And if you're in Europe or you have access to this and you have a way to buy and pick up this table, I don't think you'll be disappointed. And it would look fabulous with a good vase on it in a room. It would add a lot to any room that it's in, just because it's architecturally, structurally so interesting looking. So give it some thought. And then on to this. This is a set of, I think there are, 13 of these? 12 of these leaf paintings that are in the manner of Ming. And what's interesting here is that they apparently it has the seals of Ming, which boy, if this is by Ming, this is a really rare set of paintings. They were in the Hultmark collection, Emil Hultmark, who died in 1943, and there are, as I said, there's a dozen of these. Here they all are. Beautifully done, beautiful colors, beautiful style of painting, just exceptional. And these are good size. These are like 17 by 17 inches. Yeah, 17 by 17 inches. 16 3/4 by 17 3/4. So basically it's 17 by 17. And they have a number of collector seal marks on them and so forth. And of course, if these are actually by Ming, then they're fantastically rare. Apparently, they had a debate about it, so they're putting them in the style of, and but even in the style of as 18th or 19th century paintings, these are beautifully done. They don't date them, as far as I know. They just say Qing Dynasty. To me, they look like 18th century pictures, but you have to make up your own mind on them. But for this estimate, $300 or $400 a piece, you can buy them all. I think it's a great opportunity. And then on to this, something unusual. This is an iron butter lamp dish from Tibet. If you're interested in Tibetan metalworks, you like Tibetan bronzes and things that were used for ritualistic purpose, this is a nice looking butter lamp. And what's really unusual about it, it is made of iron and is inlaid with gilt. This is a beautiful little lamp and unusual. And if you buy this kind of thing, you most often see them. You'll see this style done in bronze. You'll see it done in silver, but iron is very unusual. Iron is a really unusual material for these, and estimated at 600 to 800 euros, 400 euro opening bid. If you're into Tibetan metalworks, you want to look at those. And then on to these, a couple of Longquan Celadon vases. One is about 13 inches tall. The other ones are around 10 inches tall. But what's nice is that the 13-inch one, the bigger of the two, is in that very, very soft, almost seafoam green, Canuta green, that they talk about in Japan when they talk about the color of Celadons. This very soft green. It's a beautiful color. It's nicely inlaid, or incised rather, and it doesn't have any damage. The bottom of it looks absolutely fine. There's good pictures of the base. If you flip it over, there it is. That's what it should look like. You have those iron deposits that pull out of the paste during the firing when it oxidizes. And the feet on these will either be, sometimes they're sort of flat or they're like this. They're very heavy, the big thick foot on here. And this is what it should look like. That's a nice authentic looking foot. And estimated at 1,000 to 1,500 euros, which seems very low. And apparently the bidders think so, because it's already up to 1,100 euros. It should bring 3,000 or 4,000 euros. But we'll see. But if they can be bought anywhere within the range of that estimate, you've got a winner. You're going to do well with them. And then this, the Carac, there's a lot of blue and white. And one of the lots I noticed was this. I thought this was a sort of a small bowl, and I found out this charger is 19 or 20 inches across. So this bowl is 14 inches across. And a couple of weeks ago, we saw a rather damaged Wanley bowl this size, about 14 inches wide, sell. And as I recall, it brought around $3,000 or so. So one that's perfect, and this one doesn't have any repairs that I can see. You want to call and check. With the charger is estimated at 4,000 to 6,000 euros, with an 800 euro current bid. There are 10 bids on this so far. It should do pretty well. This lot should do well, but it's not in the trade we call it cover the lot. Throw a bid on it that you'd be willing to pay, just to make sure you don't say to yourself later, oh, I should have left a bid on that thing. It went within my range. Always leave a covering bid just to get you in the game. All right, and do the same on eBay, wherever you are. Leave a bid. Always leave a bid. And then hopping over here, we talked about the Freeman sale in a video this week that did very well. They had a really good week. But they also have an Americana sale coming up. And if you follow auctions, you know that when they put together Americana sales, they very often include good Chinese export porcelain in the sales. All the auction houses do it. Northeast Auctions up in New Hampshire here, when they were running sales years ago, they'd have great American furniture, and then they'd throw in some really great export porcelain. And this is the same kind of a thing. And here you have a group of 15 very fine Chinese export Fitzhugh pieces. This is a heck of a lot, and there's a bunch of these big lots. I'm going to go through a few of them. Very nice large platter, 1, 2, 3 hot water plates, a very fine oval-shaped fish platter with the original strainer, okay, with the original strainer on it. And then this super looking Fitzhugh or Nanking rather tureen, but very, very fine workmanship on it. And the same for the two small tureens here, the miniature tureens with their undertrays, and a gravy boat with its undertray. All right, all with an estimate of $2,000 to $3,000. That's a lot for a dealer to buy. And then this is the mother of all lots. If you're interested in rose medallion, rose manton, and rose canton, look carefully at this lot, what's in here, and do some math in your head, because what you're going to find is things like this tucked in here. Very nice canton mug, some very nice canton rose mandarin dishes, and rose mandarin mug rather. You see up here you've got a catagon with a rose medallion landscape on it, which is unusual. Those alone typically sell for $600 to $800. And you have a very nice high-domed teapot here, a good tureen, several nice pair of vases that have been lamped out, and then you have other vases all along here, over in here. There's a couple of square vases. You have more tea sets, more teapots, numerous teapots, a planter, and you just go on and on. Add it up in your head. There's a lamp. Add it up in your head and figure it out against a $3,000 to $5,000 estimate. And I think you're going to see that if you're a dealer, there's a profit to be made in here. I would suggest you go and pick the stuff up yourself, though, because you're going to spend a lot on shipping. But if you can get down there to pick this lot up, boy, I think you can make some money. And the same thing goes for this. This is a really interesting group of occupational scenes painted around 1800 to 1820, somewhere in there. They're Chinese, but these are not on pith paper. Most occupational paintings were done on pith. And pith is that very brittle paper, and the sheets tended to be quite small. These appear to be on English paper. You want to, you can call and check to see if they're watermarked. If they are, they probably will say Watman on them. It was a British company that provided paper. But these are not little. The pith examples of these tend to be quite small, 5 by 7 inches, something like that. These are big. These are 17 by 14. All right, these are large, full sheets. And what I like about them is that the quality of the drawing is absolutely excellent. And they have all these different, the salt cellar, the sugar cellar rather, and then you have these guys here mixing, it looks like they're mixing medicines. You have the meat purveyor, You have a spice seller under his umbrella. You have people making bamboo furniture. Here's another fishmonger weighing out some fish. Here you have a guy repairing ceramics. This is interesting. We've all seen the staple repairs on porcelain. Well, here's a staple repairer. This is what he does. And he's got his little this thing that looks like one of those wooden bows with a string that you used to use to run at the wood to start fires camping. Well, they also had a drill that was made like this. And the bow, as you move it back and forth, and you have a little bit, it causes the bit to spin and drill into the porcelain, so they could add the ceramics. They did to pottery too. You could add the staples, and you can see he's already put in several staples. And this fellow is sitting here waiting patiently and so forth. Nice looking scenes. And it is a barrel maker and so forth. Nice lot. 13 of these. What are they worth a piece? They got to be worth $300 or $400 each at least. And so the estimate's reasonable. And then over here to this, 28 Chinese export porcelain tablewares, most of which are 18th century. This grisaille decorated plate may be Jing period, maybe first quarter of the 19th century, but the rest of them all look to be 18th century. And you've got a very nice tobacco leaf, a double-handled cup and saucer here. You've got a really good-looking teapot over here. You've got a nice-looking, this is sepia, not grisaille up here, the brown dish. I meant to say sepia. Over here you have a grisaille tea caddy with a Fitzhugh tea caddy next to it and so on, estimated at $1,500 to $2,500. All right, so there's money to be made, and the same goes for this. Big Fitzhugh, orange Fitzhugh, which you know is very desirable among collectors. Here's a huge set of it. Estimated at $3,000 to $5,000. And then this, the Ulysses Grant Chinese export fish plates. Now, the story behind these fish plates is that Ulysses Grant and his wife, after the Civil War was over, did order a set of these, but they only ordered 24, I think 20 or 24 of them. And they were very fond of the pattern. They were actually had gone to Europe to buy porcelain on a trip, and to buy objects for their home and so forth in the 1870s. And they also placed an order for these plates in this pattern. Now, this pattern, we've seen them before. If you've been collecting for any length of time, you've seen these fish plates before. They look like flounder or haddock on here, or halibut rather, not haddock, halibut. But they did them beyond just than for Ulysses Grant. All right, wait a minute. All right, and then let's see here. Excuse my dogs; they are upset today. I don't know what that is. Hold on a second. Okay, excuse me for the interruption. We had some guests. The dogs went wild. Poor people. Thought they were going to run off down the street. Okay, so anyway, the story behind these plates are, just to wrap it up, they were produced for people other than for Ulysses Grant, but this is the pattern, sort of like the Rockefeller pattern. You see it not all the time, but it does turn up on the market. And they didn't all belong to the Rockefeller family. The same thing with all these fish plates. They didn't all belong to Ulysses S. Grant. Now, they're saying the family. So if it came from the Ulysses S. Grant family, you want to check and confirm that and see if they have any documentation, because this would make them very interesting from a historic standpoint. They'd be really worth chasing. The estimate is $8,000 to $12,000 for the three of them. So they must have something indicating that these came from the family, because without that Ulysses Grant attribution, they're worth about $400, $500 a piece, somewhere around there. So it would seem they have some information. So find out about it. Check it out. All right. The other thing I wanted to mention, that those of you out there that buy rugs, there are a couple of very nice rugs coming up at Kutani Auctions in Geneseo, New York. In a couple of weeks, almost 3 weeks, in 19 days. And they're both bee jars. And if you're rug people and you like bee jars, and if you know what a bee jar is, they're also known in the trade as, they used to be called iron rugs, because they tend to be very heavily woven, very densely piled. They wear phenomenally well. They last a long time. Here's a nice one with a sort of a Haradi pattern on a cotton foundation, good colors, and it's 4 by 7 feet, I believe. 7 feet, yeah, 7 by 4. Good looking rug, nice colors. Same thing with this. This is a very classic bee jar. This is with the floating central medallion, this nice arbrash in the red going down the field with these hanging pendants on the ends. This is classic bee jar, 19th century, late 19th century, on a wool foundation. And those of you who don't know, I should explain what arbrash is, so you don't say, what the heck is that? Arbrash is the result of different colored lots of reds. For example, when the weaver sits, they sit with these skeins of wool, and the wool is dyed in batches. And when they finish one batch of red ground wool here, for example, they grab another skein and do it. And what you invariably end up with in many cases is you get these slight changes in color because the wool is changed. You can actually see a line here where it went from a darker wool to a lighter red. Similar, but not exactly the same. So you get this very charming effect of slight variations in color. I like it. I love that. I love that effect. And then you have these serrated leaf patterns all around the outside, again with the Haradi pattern and the crab border. Same border you see this border on bee jars. You see the same border on harises and sometimes on serape carpets, that kind of thing. But this is one heck of a fine rug. And the estimate's very reasonable, $2,000 to $4,000, but it's 7 by 12 feet. This is a big rug. That's pretty big for a bee jar. They don't become much bigger than that. And it looks to be in wonderful condition. Get a condition report. Make sure it doesn't smell like animal urine or anything. But I don't see any staining, so I don't think it's a problem. But certainly worth looking into. And lastly is this. There's a bunch of you nowadays that seem to be collecting Kutani. And this is a sale at Nadow's. It's coming up in a couple of weeks, just 2 weeks from tomorrow. This very nice gilt decorated with enamel Kutani cup. It's 5 inches deep. Looks like it's about 4 inches wide, roughly. Nice white porcelain, signed on the bottom, and a good looking tea or table cup, table bowl. Okay, Meiji period, modestly estimated at $200 to $400, $100 opening bid. If you can get it for that range, it's a nice buy. It's a good looking piece of Kutani. It's very elegant, very, very elegant thing. All right, now what happened on eBay last week? Couple of things. One, Josh Chamberlain, Juice 1499, he had a sale that ended, and he had this, and he conservatively dated this as being 19th or 20th century. I don't think it is. I think it's absolutely 19th century, probably mid or a little earlier, judging by the bottom of it, how it looks, and the way it's decorated, the tone of the cobalt, the tone of the underglazed red. Beautifully done. This was technically very, very well done because we talked about it many times, is that underglazed red and underglazed blue both fire and react and produce their colors at different temperatures. So balancing the colors and cooling and heating at the right rate to make sure the blue doesn't get messed up and make sure the red fires properly and doesn't turn green, which you don't want, because that's what happened to copper red. Now, sometimes they fire copper red and they intentionally get a green out of it. They want to blush it a little bit. But in this case, they wanted it all red, and they did it, and they did it beautifully. And a lot of folks like this. Ended up selling for $2,125. Nice looking vase. And Josh also sold this, and here you have the copper red with the green in it. There it is. This is the result of copper red. Little blushes and changes in the kiln when it was being fired causes these green things to pop out. Now, these had Kangxi marks on them, but I don't think they weren't Kangxi. These were 19th century. But beautifully done. There were a number of companies that did this kind of thing in New York, in the United States, and in Europe, where they would take Chinese porcelains between 1900 and the 1930s, and we've seen them before from Yamanaka. Edward Farmer in New York was a famous store where they made custom desk sets and accoutrements for a house, incorporating certain types of stone, agate, marble, these things from Europe, ormolu mounts from France, and then coupling them with Japanese and Chinese ceramics. And this is what these are, a couple of inkwells that they made with these bronze, they were probably originally gilded, bronze caps and bases. Very attractive. And ended up selling for $3,383. There are people who, this is what they collect. They collect these modified pieces that were brought to the West and then given these treatments of adding hardware to them to make them more functional in a Western home. And then over to this. This was that big vase with the dragon scene here, the landscape, and then all different types of fruit, pears and pomegranates and peaches and things around the bottom. Whoever decorated this was a pro at borders. I've talked about this a few weeks ago when it first went up. All the different border decorations that the artist incorporated into this, plus a chin lung mark on the bottom. You've got this thick, rounded 19th century foot, probably made in the mid 19th century somewhere. And it was broken. That was the other thing that was rather interesting, was this thing had where's the bottom of it? Right here. You'll see there's an old repair right here, glue line. I would get that fixed if I bought this thing. Get it out of there. A good restorer could soak this, take it apart, then put it back together and gently enamel it and make it seamless. And I think it would be much nicer instead of having this catch your eye every time you look at the bottom of the vase. Get it fixed. In the end, it did great. It brought $2,674, but beautifully decorated, absolutely mid-19th century, and very fine colors, really good, really pretty colors. Had it not been broken, it probably would have brought 10,000. All right, and then over to this, the Ming marked, looks like it probably like a Jing mark on it, or Wanli mark, blue and white bottle vase, but this is a 19th century example. Here's the bottom of it, that very classic mid to late 19th century foot rim. You see the same kind of foot rim on Kangxi revival pieces all the time. Very similar, in this very dense cobalt decoration. There's the mark, all right? And it ended up bringing $1,197, all right? Because it was unusual, even though it had most of this form. When they were reproduced, they didn't put any marks on them. And this one has a Ming mark, which makes it kind of interesting. Even though it's a long way, it's 400 years out of date 300 years out of date for the Ming Dynasty. All right, and then they also sold this, and this was one of the relative bargains of the week. Was a rose mandarin punch bowl that was, I think it was 15 inches or 14 inches in diameter. 14 inches in diameter. Let's see here. It's got a faint star crack in the glaze. It can't be seen on the interior, so it's an exterior crack. And it's got a little chip. Other than that, that was it. It sold for $732, which was a very good buy for that, because we've seen these sell with occasional frits and nicks and so forth to them, and they can bring often $1,200, $1,300 up to $1,600. And this has very good decoration. This bowl was made before the mid 19th century, probably made in the late 1830s or 40s, something like that. Nice looking bowl. And then over to this. This was offered by the Shangri-La guys. It's a late Qing, early Republic dish, armorial dish, but very unusual, with this soft yellow crest in the center, and then these radiating flowers coming out of it. Just very, very pretty. Ended up selling for $360, but I think it was worth it because it's a great looking plate. It's great looking porcelain, and it showed the delicacy with which they were still working at times when there was probably a financial motivation to do a good job. How well they could decorate these still. It's done up to the quality of 18th century porcelains, in my opinion. So, $360 seems reasonable. All right, and then this fan painting. When this was first listed, I got an inquiry from one guy, and I gave him an answer, and then in the next 3 days, I got 3 more. I got a bunch of inquiries about this painting. I liked it a great deal. I love horse paintings, as a lot of you know. I own a few of them, and I was sorely tempted on this one. But after I got a bunch of inquiries from people, I said, well, I really shouldn't bid on it because other people are, they're going to bid on it. So I've left it alone. But liked this a great deal. 18th or 19th century work. Nice looking script on there, but I love the way the horse is done. It's very gently placed on here, attractive. And it brought about exactly what it should bring. It brought $288. These normally sell these sort of not generic fans, but these, not done by very, very famous artists. Typically sell for, I think I estimated to everybody at 250 to 350, 300 to 350, somewhere in there. And this one, it brought $288. This was from Downsize 13 down in Florida. It gets interesting things. And then this was one of the interesting bits of the week on here. It was sold by a dealer over in England, and in China, Hong Kong in particular, at the turn of the century, and in Shanghai, there was a big international community, and there were all kinds of international, all kinds of community events and sports and things that they did, cricket, and all that, and also hunting. And this was from the Penang Hunt Club jumping competition, won by Uganda. All right, because they would have countries would go and have their, be represented, and this was a really interesting bowl. It's signed by the maker on the bottom here, but beautiful quality silver. The silver work on here was really, really fine. Deep repoussé work, nicely chased all up around here. You have a nice interior scene. Here you have an exterior scene in the jungle and so forth with these beautiful rocks and whatnot, teapots being prepared, and so forth. All right, and in the end, it did fine. It ended up selling for $2,123, and it was marked by Quang Shing, who had stores in places where they had studio workshops in both, I believe, Shanghai and Hong Kong. I'm pretty sure they had places in both where they made stuff. And this was a wonderful bowl, about 7 inches in diameter. I liked it a great deal. And then over to this, another piece of silver, a little sugar bowl with repoussé plum blossoms all the way around it. So forth. This needs a polishing. This is pretty dirty. Anyway, it's marked on the bottom, and it came with its ladle, which is terrific, and ended up selling for $1,461. All right. And then over here for this, the Chinese export high-domed teapot. Now, what's funny is that there's a couple of weeks ago one very, very similar to this that had metal hinges, you may recall, applied to it, sold from a seller up in the Netherlands, as I recall. And nearly identical. It had this, I don't know if it had the same European street scene, but very similar. Here's another one, nice-looking Qing period. There you have some sort of estimate, somebody had an old sticker, and so forth, but rather nice. Our dog April is barking today, as you can tell. Spring. This sold for $898. All right, and then over to this. I threw this in because it's a very useful book. Tony Allen lives in New Zealand, and he's been a dealer for a long time. He does research. He's a very scholarly guy. I've communicated with him over the years. Nice guy. He's had some health issues in the last few years, like yours truly. But at any rate, he was keeping on with what he was doing, and he wrote these books. He wrote a number of these books, I think 3 or 4 of them, about authenticating and identifying fakes, identifying later Chinese porcelains as opposed to copies of later Chinese porcelains. And this is one that he did for the predominantly the late Qing period, right through the late 1900s, right up until the year 2000. And he uses photographs that he finds from things that have sold on eBay that are useful. It's real world stuff. This isn't pie in the sky, the record prices at Sothebys stuff. This is the stuff that the average person who's out looking for Chinese antiques and porcelain are likely to encounter, and what to look out for, what to look for. And he does a very good job with the photographs. These are profusely illustrated. And one of the things I found interesting is we used to sell a lot of stuff on eBay. And I noticed a number of things that we sold over the years he used. I think it's not that our stuff was so much better than everybody else's. I think it was we paid extra special attention to photography. And he was, I think, focusing in on the ones that had the best pictures. And we had gone to some expense to set up a very good photo area, which we still use for other things now. But back then, a lot of it was for bits we were throwing on eBay. All right. And so anyway, that's it. But it's an $89 book. As far as art reference books goes, that's not expensive. Some of these good books now can cost thousands. All right, and then over to what's coming up, what's going to be on the newsletter page. So those are things that were on the newsletter page last week for everybody. This is what's going to be on one of these Wu Shuang Ping pots. This looks like an early 20th century one or late Qing. Nice looking little pot. It's up to $182. Ought to go up to $500 or $600 by the time it's done. All right, and then this very attractive Japanese Meiji period plate. It's a little over 9 inches in diameter. Classic decoration with the clouds here at the bottom and at the top. And it's sort of an overlay technique that they use. And on the bottom, you have this beautiful like a flower cart, okay, or passenger cart, and then this nice textile pattern running around the outside. Here's the back of it. Pretty classic later Meiji period decoration. Very nice. What's it up to? It's up to $36. Ought to bring $100, but it's a good looking piece of Meiji ceramics. And then another seller we came across, they have two of these square plates. One of them is this one, which is Kangxi, and it's been clobbered in Europe. This is known as clobberware, where they add extra decorations. Here it's red, predominantly in gold, and a rather nice example. And it's up to a whopping $1.29. So you want to look into that because it's a $150 to $250 dish. All right, and then there's this one, which is very similar in form and style, but hasn't been clobbered. And you'll see this pattern here in the middle, which is a pattern you see on the bottom, typically of Tibetan metalworks. Tibetan bronzes will often have the two vajras, and they crisscross them like this. On the bottom of the bronze. This is the same pattern, and it's been applied in porcelain using cobalt enamels. All right, and this is up to just $1.36, and as I said, this should do quite well. It's a nice looking plate, nice, very collectible, very collectible. All right, and then lastly is this, the Celadon, small Celadon. I had a couple of inquiries about it. It is, in my opinion, an 18th century Celadon. I don't think they have it listed as possibly 19th century. I don't think it is. The foot, the base, this brown dressing, this very, very nice, very faint, gentle iron oxide line running right along there. The shape of the foot, this slightly V-shaped foot, looks very 18th century to me. Here's using this very dominating Greek key sort of border running through the middle, and then the wave pattern or petal pattern at the bottom, and then lappets at the top. And it's up to $810, has 2 days to go, and I suspect it'll double at the end. But that's a nice piece of Celadon. They have it listed as 17th or 18th century. It's not 17th century. It's not 17th century. They're mistaken on that. It's an 18th century example, Qinlong, and he's got that part right. He's just 17th century is not right. 18th century, and very nicely done. It's a very nice piece of porcelain, and a good color, good desirable color, that soft Celadon green. All right, so that's it for the week. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't subscribed to us yet here on YouTube, please do. Please leave a comment. I love reading the comments. And come over and use the newsletter page over on bitamount.com. We update it every week with listings that we find. It's completely free. You can sign up to get notified. There's a sign-up form there you can use to let us know that you want to be told when the page is updated, which we do every week. And you'll get a notice as soon as it's done. Okay, and thanks for watching, and have a great weekend. Have a great weekend. Have a good Easter with your family, and we'll be back next week. Okay, bye-bye.